Traffic na naman?
Puno kayong parking. Una na lang mo.
Ay, ano ba naman to? Walang katapusang pila.
Late pa ba ang doctor? Napara ba ako yung appointment?
I just want coffee. Whole day na ako nakapila.
Wala na sad cash ang ATM. Mag-withdraw pa man ta ko.
I just lost so much money and time today.
Enjoy the convenience of Dialogue Home Care Physical Therapy. Safe, reliable, and seamless transactions with trained and licensed physical therapists.
Doon po tayo hakbang sa close to the edge. So, Ate Joan, mauna kayo. Tapos kamay mo, Ate Joan, nakaganito kayo. Nakakamay. Yan. Alright, good. Would you want to share with us your experience doing online physical therapy in the last 10 months?
You know, I started thinking about taking therapy with you again because I was worried because of the pandemic. I'm supposed not to go out of the house. So I don't know what to do now because I have to be in prison in the house. You cannot go out. When you suggested that I take online exercises, I said I just had to do it. I think it's better because you as my therapist would program exercises that would address my concerns. It's great, Josh. I really felt the difference before and after the exercises. I noticed I have gained my strength and my flexibility. I could balance myself better. After the exercises, I noticed I could easily lift my legs and bend my knees. And it's so different. I can walk faster and I can walk with confidence going up the stairs because you taught me how to do it the right way. So now I could go up and down my bed faster and easily, and I'm not afraid of falling down or falling off the bed.
Pag-angat po ng paa, sabay. Sabay ng pagbaba. Okay? One time.
Sabay ng pambaba.
Kasi
Okay.
pag binuhat niyo po, may masakit sa likod. Okay, so try nating sabay. Okay?
Sabay, okay.
Ready? 1, 2. Ulit po.
Ulit.
Apa. So, yan. 1, 2. Yun. Almost. Sige. And then facing up. Good.
That's right, Josh. Thank you very much for helping me. Maybe I can invite my senior friends who have also exercises online. I bet you they won't regret it.
Well, there we go.
Traffic na naman?
Puno kayong parking. Una na lang mo.
Ay, ano ba naman to? Walang katapusang pila.
Late pa ba ang doctor? Napara ba ako yung appointment?
I just want coffee. Whole day na ako nakapila.
Wala na sad cash ang ATM. Mag-withdraw pa man ta ko.
I just lost so much money and time today.
Enjoy the convenience of Dialogue Home Care Physical Therapy. Safe, reliable, and seamless transactions with trained and licensed physical therapists.
Okay, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Good afternoon. Hi,
Good
Hilda.
afternoon. Hi, Sir Josh. Excited
Wow.
na naman ako for this month's community talk.
Ito ata ang pinaka nakakasabik sa lahat ng community talk natin, no?
Oo.
What do you think?
Excited ako malaman yun and ma-share sa mga friends ko kasi nga nung nag-share ako nung post natin sa Facebook, ang dami talagang nag-message sa akin about this. No? So, Meron palang ganyan. So, parang hindi kasi talaga pa siya kilala dito sa Philippines. So, excited din ako na ma-share yung knowledge ko rin na matututunan ko today. Ikaw naman, Sir John.
Excited din ako marinig ang knowledge na i-share mo. Mukhang marami kang i-share dyan. At bukod sa ating dalawa, meron tayong kasamang bagong guest ngayon, surprise guest. Si Pity Bon. Hello, Pity Bon. Hi.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Sir Bon.
Bigla ang
Kamusta?
guest niyo.
Oo,
Ay, okay lang.
So,
Okay
yung
na
pag-guest
naman.
mo, biglaan lang, no? Talaga bang
Yes.
interested ka sa topic or meron ka ding i-share na
Hindi
information?
naman, pero ano naman, yung topic kasi na to, no, parang nakuha rin talaga niya yung attention ko. Kasi for PWDs nga, isa sa mga na-realize namin ay ito yung parang hindi masyadong na-tackle, no, na topic kasi medyo sensitive, especially sa culture din natin sa Philippines. Kaya for me, it's very important na talagang ngayon, no, mabigyan natin, no, ng boses itong ano na to, itong topic na to kasi napakalaking bagay niya, especially sa mga kababayan natin na may kapansanan.
Yeah, I agree with Sir Bon kasi this topic also is one of my, ito talaga yung naging interest ko sa master's ko. I'm taking my master's degree now and nakita ko nga na parang sabi nga sa akin, parang ako yung kauna-unahan na gustong mag-tap nitong topic na to. And yun nga, parang nung nakita ko yung, nagbasa ako ng mga articles about sexual health, sexual rehab, isa talaga siya sa parang mahirap, may resistant talaga siya sa healthcare. No, parang ang hirap siyang itap kasi medyo parang siguro dahil hindi ko alam kung sa culture ba natin sa Philippines or even sa ibang bansa din, no, limited pa rin ng studies about sexual rehabilitation. So I'm so excited with this topic din talaga.
Sa tingin nyo, bakit hindi siya masyadong binibigyan ng attention? Kasi I think it's very important, di ba?
Yeah.
Mahalagang part siya ng well-being natin, no, bilang tao. So, anong opinion nyo about it? Definitely, I agree with what you both said. Yung culture, especially Philippine culture, is at least on the surface, I would say, is very conservative on surface. Parang we don't really talk about things and on all that. Pero, or I would say, it takes a certain level of comfort bago natin pwedeng mapag-usap. Pinag-uusapan din siya, pero hindi agad-agad. Tama ba? Yun ba yung napansin?
Correct, Sir Josh. Kasi nung ginawa ko din tong pag-search dito sa study nito, there are different kinds of framework. And parang ang nakita ko na parang common denominator nila is talagang kailangan talaga, like for example, meron tayong tinatawag na please it model. So first stage pa lang is you need to ask permission. Para ibig sabihin nun, yung importance ng stage na yun is kailangan talaga ma-feel nung patient mo na comfortable kayo sa isa't isa na makapag-open sila. Kasi nga, di ba, parang ito kasi sinasabi natin no, parang hindi siya natatap sa field natin, pero kung mabasa natin yung articles, no, number 1 siya na concern, lalo na sa mga male, no, na about sa sex life nila after injury, after having this kind of condition. So, itong part na to, parang ang nakakasad lang na kahit ito yung number 1 na concern nila, hindi nila yun masabi kasi sa atin. It's because of siguro, dun pa lang sa stage 1 pa lang na yun, nahihiya na sila. Yung asking permission to have a deep conversation, no. So, with us po. Siguro yun.
So hopefully, because of this effort, no, to feature sex education for persons with disabilities, sana masimulan natin yung pagbabago na mas maging open na, malaman natin ng mga patients natin, ng mga clients, at ng mga nanonood at manonood pa in the future na sex life is also part of things or physical therapy that we can help improve the sexual well-being of our patients, our clients, or general public. Okay? Alright, sige. So simulan na natin ang ating diskusyon. I will first start with a quick history of Valentine's Day. No? Kaya naman natin biglang pinag-usapan ang topic na to dahil malapit na ang Valentine's Day. So, sa ancient history, nagsimula siya sa Rome actually. No? So, nung marami pang most of the people were pagans at the time, or at least written history. So, meron tayong tinatawag na feast na Lupercalia. Okay, this is a Roman festival that was done even before Christianism spread. At ang ginagawa nila, this is parang a fertility festival, no? So, symbolism yung goat at that time. So, ang ginagawa ng mga tao as part of the festival was they get the hide of the goat, yung balat ng goat, tapos they have a celebration about it. So, parang ang belief ay kapag tinamaan sila or parang pag hinampas sila ng goat hide, the females will be more fertile. Okay? Or mas madali sila makakapagbuntis. So, this daw was celebrated around February 15. Okay? However, when Catholicism spread, napalitan siya ng isang Catholic festival in honor of, babalikan ko tong slide na to mamaya, but in honor of Saint Valentine. Itong photo natin sa pinakakaliwa. So, sino ba si Saint Valentine daw? So, at the time of Emperor Claudius, okay, Emperor Claudius during the Roman reign or during the Roman Empire, ang ginawa nitong si Emperor ay sinabi niya, bawal mag-asawa ang mga batang lalaki kasi mas magaling kayong maging soldier pag wala kayong asawa. So, because of this priest, si Saint Valentine, ang ginawa niya, secretly, yung mga gusto magpakasal, kinakasal niya, secretly. Kaya siya pinugutan ng ulo. Okay, yun ang history nito. So, kaya natin sa mga hindi nakakala, actually, ngayon ko lang din nalaman to yun, kaya pala Valentine's Day dahil in honor of Saint Valentine. Ngayon, from that culture, ngayon, during the English time naman or during the Victorian era, doon na kumalat yung pagpapadala ng mga love letter nyo during this time. Okay? And ito, meron pang snippet ng Greek history naman. Kung nakikita nyo yung mga cherubim, di ba, yung mga angel or mga cupido, ang galing naman yan sa Greek mythology, no? So, Eros or Cupid, and equivalent niya sa Rome, siya daw nagpapana siya ng mga ginto. Yung mga gusto niyang mapa-inlove sa isa't isa. So, yun lang yung quick history about Valentine's Day while we're celebrating it. And then, funny enough is, it's actually in sync with also yung mating season ng mga birds daw. So, parang may something about February 14 and 15 that we're celebrating it and commemorating it with the month of love. So, before we continue, may gusto ba kayong i-share dyan, Hilda and Bon, about your Valentine's Day plans or aspirations?
Parang na-speechless ako. Joke lang.
Parang hindi ako makarelate.
Simula pa nung high school ako, alam ko ng story nito ni Saint Valentine. Kasi parang siguro high school pa lang no-bitter joke lang. So parang every February talaga, hindi ako parang nag-ano talaga na love month siya, parang gano'n. Lagi ako nagpo-post niya na in commemoration of Saint Valentine talaga. Kasi parang hindi ko alam, inaral ko talaga yung history niya before no high school. No? So yon. Pero ngayong Valentine's, baka may humabol pa. Ilang days pa lang.
Actually, ito po talaga yung main agenda nito para kay Hilda. Hanapan natin siya.
Ikaw, Bon.
Wala naman. Ano lang. May klase ako niyan eh. Yan. Dinner lang. Dinner siguro with parents. Yun.
Yun. Pag-ibig. Can come naman in any forms. No?
Yeah.
Okay. Yun ang tanungin. Let's move.
Umiwan?
Okay. Wala na natin ang numbers natin. Okay. So, bakit ba natin pinag-uusapan ang sexual dysfunctions? No? Worldwide, ayon sa study ni Rosen noong 2020, 43% of women actually have sexual dysfunction. So almost half, di ba? Kung tutuusin, napakadami. Tapos hindi to alam, hindi to people don't know na ganito pala kadami. Ito ay yung mga na-interview pa lang. I'm pretty sure marami pa yan na hindi pa documented. Sa men naman, 31%, a little less compared to women. So, in our setting sa Philippines, isang pag-aaral lang yung nahanap natin dyan. This happened in Makati Med in 2018 through the leadership of Dr. Panimbatan. Sabi dito, sa females with diabetes, 72% of them have sexual dysfunctions. At ang cause niyan ay lubrication, orgasm, and pain issues for this population. So, ganun siya ka uncharted territory sa atin na hindi natin masyadong inaaral, hindi natin pinag-uusapan, but based on these preliminary numbers, napakadaming tao ang nagkakaroon ng sexual dysfunctions. So, dahil dyan, let's turn it over to the real expert at ipapakilala na ni Hilda ang tunay na nakakaalam at sagot sa lahat ng mga problema natin. Problema talaga, no? Kaalaman. Pakikilala na ni Hilda ang ating guest speaker for today.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to, good afternoon again, everyone. So I'm so excited to introduce our guest speaker for this month's community talk. So, she is a result-driven healthcare corporate executive of private and publicly listed multi-billion peso companies specializing in genomics and in vitro diagnostics, effective communications officer with 3-year experience in the city government of Manila and the National Department of Health, with specialization on sexual and reproductive medicine and health risk communications from University of South Wales, United Kingdom, and Yale University, USA, and the managing partner of an IT company, Biostech PH, that is in partnership with the German company in Munich. So let us all welcome our sexual and reproductive health specialist, Doc Casey. Hi, Doc.
Hi, hello. Am I live? Yeah.
Yan, Doc. Hello, Doc.
Hi, Hilda. I thank you for having me, and good afternoon to everyone who is on Facebook with us today and YouTube, right?
Yes,
Doc Casey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for, creating a platform for this topic. I'd like to say it's a very modern, for a PT organization to actually deal and talk about sexual health. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc. Maybe ask your story lang, no? How did you get into this field and how did you end up specializing in sexual and reproductive health?
Yeah. So, well, it all started, I guess, with my desire to really be an OBGYN. Before becoming a nurse, my sister was a nurse, and she would tell me stories of how they help, um, and assist during deliveries. That kind of started the passion, I guess, and drive to be with women during that period of time, during the pregnancy. And I really enjoyed it back in nursing school and in med school. But, life has a way of turning things out, and I had to work right away. And that's why I got to corporate first and then government. And while I was in the Department of Health in 2021, um, this post grad specialization landed on my lap. And so I was able to choose from various clinical specializations, but sabi ko, sexual and reproductive health is something that's really close to my heart. And I know that in the near future, it's going to be like mental health. Na it will also be it's going to be more normalized. The conversation about it, people getting treatments for it. Kaya, so here I am. Sabi ko, I took that chance to take that specialization, and I and uh, thank God I finished.
And thank God you're here with us. Also.
Yeah.
It's so nice to hear what you said na eventually this will be streamlined, no? Hindi na siya magiging patago. I'm sure we're progressing naman, no? You can see that mental health before, generations before us would never admit that they are struggling. Diba? Parang it's like put on a face talaga and just endure and diba? And then ngayon, we're talking about these things. What do you think?
Yeah, I really think that in recent times there's been a growing, you know, demand for conversation and access to it. Pero syempre, especially for um, a conservative country like the Philippines, we're a Christian country, and you know the other half is Muslim too,
Mhm.
right? And and first, we're a developing country. It's not just the conversation, but the access also to sexual health needs. Because it usually falls, you know, as one of the last
Mhm.
priorities, right? And but you know, luckily also for the Philippines, 'di ba, kakapasa lang natin a few years ago yung reproductive health bill or the
Mhm.
RH law. And so now, especially abroad and even here, you know, we have a number of podcasts now just mainly talking about, you know, sexual health or sexuality per se or sexual well-being. And meron na rin ibang mga, you know, social media platforms, businesses that's booming and engaging people. So aside from, you know, they're selling their products, they're trying to change the conversation, normalizing pleasure-seeking behaviors for women.
That's really interesting what you said. And actually, yung nabanggit mo about being conservative, yung in the introduction, my personal opinion about this is on surface we are conservative, but deep down, a few layers under, we are actually not. And then, ano kasi, first of all, I'm a history buff, so I really like learning about
Yes.
Philippine culture, even prehistoric times. And before colonization, we were actually very open about sexuality, about
Yeah.
polygamy, about these are behaviors that were okay with us before before foreign influence. But that's not the topic for today. Let's just say hi to our audience. Hello, Madam Elsie, our number one supporter, my mother. Hello po.
Hello po.
Um, Miss Shalimiel Cruz at meron siyang shout out kay
Queen.
Miss Manila 2014. Ako, hindi natin na-include sa credentials. Si Doc Casey ay isang beauty queen. Hindi ba?
Long time ago. I'm retired.
And then Mr. Gregor Posadas, hello po sa inyo lahat. Okay, so let's move on. Yeah, so let's have some terms here, Doc Casey. So as a start, we'll have you define some terms that are commonly used in the realm of sexual health. So I'll just have you read it, and then you can just go with this on your own. We'll just listen.
Okay, so I feel like I'm being quizzed.
Yes, it
So
is.
terms, desire, arousal, orgasm, and ejaculation. These are phases in the sexual cycle. So parang ano lang yan, water cycle, you know, life cycle. So the sexual cycle, sex also has its cycle. Um, in some other texts, the phases are excitement, plateau, resolution. Okay, so usually the excitement phase of the sexual cycle includes desire and arousal. So desire is it could take this is the longest part of the sexual cycle. It can take from minutes to several hours. So in other words, basically desire is just our libido, right? So that drive to want to engage in the encounter. So physiologically, ano yan? the heart rate starts to beat faster. You feel a bit of flushing of your skin. Maybe if you're next to somebody or if you're alone, there is some of your lady parts or male parts are getting excited. So um, I don't know how open we could be, but in the
Go, Doc. Go.
purpose of
It's all
science.
yours.
So example would be, nipples are starting to parang get harder and stiffer. So it's a form of excitation, right? And like I said, this can take from minutes to hours. And then arousal is still part of excitement, which is the build up, right? To basically eventually your orgasm. And dito, the vaginal walls and the cavernosa of the male, they dilate more, they get flushed, dilated, and blood rushes there in those areas, causing you know lubrication, causing the penis to be harder and to sustain that stiffness or hardness for a few minutes, right? Maybe for other people they can sustain it for an hour, right? And so another phase, the next phase usually is the plateau. So arousal and plateau somehow overlapping yan, right? So when you say plateau, you get that steady state of lubrication, hardness, and I guess excitation, right? For females naman. And then climax is the shortest of the phases in our sexual cycle. And of course, for women, you feel that as the involuntary contractions of your vaginal walls, the pelvis, right? For men, we know that as, of course, the ejaculation, right? And after that, the last part of, so that's it. So ejaculation, right? The release basically of the products of, um, um, the sexual action or intercourse. So yeah, so of course for men that is your semen, right, which is a mixture of seminal fluid, fructose, proteins, and the sperm, right? And then the last part of the sexual cycle is resolution. So from there, from the excited phase, everything goes back to normal. So your heart rate goes lower, you're more relaxed. For, in the psychological part and relationship part, parang, couples usually tend to have more clarity. So, ladies, if you want to really get to the heart of your, your partner after ejaculation, the resolution phase is the best time to ask them the serious questions kasi clear-minded sila. You know?
Wow, interesting. So, Doc, can we get a recap of the phases again?
Yeah. So recap of our phases, you have excitement, plateau, orgasm, and then resolution.
That's okay.
Under excitement, you have desire and arousal.
Right. So these terms that we are showing are parts of the cycle, correct? So can I just chime in? I think so for guys, I think yung hindi masyadong clear yung distinction with orgasm and ejaculation. No? They're two different things, correct?
Yeah.
Tama ba ako? From what I understand.
Well, actually, we kind of use it na alternatingly, right?
Okay.
Parang orgasm, especially to male, that's the ejaculation. But but the ejaculate itself is just the fluid, right? What comes out, right? The product. Pero ejaculation is part of the orgasm, and orgasm is that climax, right? That phase that involves the involuntary, eventually contractions of also the penile muscles, the pelvic floor, leading, helping to release, which is the ejaculate.
Sige, kamustahin ko lang yung mga tao sa how's everyone? Parang masyado umiinit yung paligid. Uh, Hilda, kumusta ka dyan? And Bon?
Ngayon, umiinit pa talaga. Nag-take down notes ako. Kasi ang dami kong natututunan talaga. So, talagang tinake note ko yung sinabi ni Doc Casey na sa resolution phase. Yun lang talaga yung phone tumatak, no? So,
Kailangan mo, kung mag-uusap, doon nasa bandang dulo. Kailangan naka-schedule.
Whatever they say before the orgasm does not count. Clouded ang judgment nila during that time.
That's so interesting. That's really, really, really interesting. Bon, kamusta ka dyan?
Okay naman po. Ayun pala, parang haba pala may mga process pa pala siya, no? So, at least ngayon parang nagkaroon ng clarity siguro sa mga audience din natin na parang hindi lang pala siya yung basta na nangyayari. Parang there's a process that happens, and especially if someone is trying to really have a successful intimate experience, parang mas maganda na mas smooth yung maging transition nila sa bawat process na yun.
Yeah, and thank you, Piki Bon, for saying that, because I'd like to emphasize also, kasi I know that there is so much pressure, right, to the orgasm, right, to ejaculate, and then females to orgasm. And some women actually don't even know how to, right? But the sexual health, sexual well-being, having a pleasurable sexual experience does not only pertain to the ability to come, right? Or to reach that orgasm. Dapat you enjoy it from the first phase pa lang, when you feel it inside you, you feel that tingling, flushing sensation in your tummy when you're with your partner. That's, that you enjoy that, and that's part of it, right? Hindi siya yung split few seconds of climax. That's not it. And I guess usually that's where the problems are, and the frustration of people when it comes to sex, kasi syempre they define the greatness of their sexual encounters just from how hard I was, and how long I was able to keep it hard, and was I able to come, right? But it should be the entire thing, so including the resolution, right? Unless of course females start interrogating their partners, and then they dread the resolution part. Right?
That's really powerful, Doc. So thank you for putting that in perspective. Tama yung sinabi mo actually, no? And it's very helpful to look at it as a whole process. From the desire part hanggang sa dulo, no? And I know everyone has different views about sex, about why we're doing it, when should we do it, or who should we do it with. But let's keep that on one side first, and let's focus lang tayo sa the physiology behind it. Are we ready for the next terms? Ito na. We are on a round 2. Sige, Doc, take it away, please.
Okay, so these are the things that we don't like hearing, right? So menopause is usually a period, which is medically, it's the 12 months after the last menstruation of a woman. And usually this happens around the age of 45 to 55. It depends, right? So menopause marks a lot of physiologic changes for females, right? There's increased irritability, hot flushes, and because of that also they have usually they're sleep deprived, and of course hormonal wise the estrogen levels fall, right? Talaga. And when your estrogen levels fall, kasama dyan yung bone also natin, mineralization, it lessens. Kaya eventually as females grow older, they're prone to osteoporosis, and then eventually injuries. And then andropause, I know most parang in pop culture, I guess they think of this as male menopause, right? But kung tutuusin, there's really no parang male menopause, right? Na not every um, male or every man would actually experience it, and not in a specific time period. Like, unlike females na talagang by the age of 45 to 55, right? Na talagang we are bound to have menopause kasi our the number of egg cells that we produce are really limited, right? It's a certain number by the time we're born. Yun na yun. That's what we're born with, and basically every month that we're ovulating, nauubos yan. So andropause is actually late onset hypogonadism. So what is hypogonadism? It's a condition that's marked by severe depletion or low levels of testosterone that eventually leads, of course, to symptoms of not um, not being able to um, get hard. They can't get hard. They can't sustain an erection, or of course, sometimes they can't reach orgasm because of that. Usually, it also entails low libido, low desire, and just like women, that's why it was called male menopause. Kasi they also experience some of the symptoms of irritability, sleepless nights because of the hormonal changes, right? But like I said, not every male could experience this. We actually have males up until they're, when they're 70, 80, you know, they could still really fully engage in sexual intercourse, and their libido is still high, right? Because their testosterone level never really dropped. So yeah, and then now couple pause. It's a term, an approach where when the couple, so both male and female, experience menopause and andropause. So when both of them experience it, couple pause is more of a term that we use for the approach to dealing with them. So instead of just dealing with, for example, the female, right, or the male, we treat them as a unit, and we treat them together, separately and together, right? And so this one with couple pause, usually it happens for um, usually for couples who are in their midlife, so parang part of their midlife crisis, right? So either psychological, relational, or talagang maybe stresses of the new stage in their life, or talagang hormonal changes. So that's part of what we try to get in the bottom of or diagnose is, but we do it as a team, right? So kasi if both of them are experiencing it and we just say, for example, deal with one partner, the other partner would still have difficulty and frustrations. So in a sense, that will also relate to frustration to the other partner. So you can never really treat the sexual dynamic. So that would be
Thanks, Doc. That's very powerful. Siguro may I just ask, are there studies also about, so let's say, so I think mas aral siguro yung, let's say, heterosexual couples, but what
Yeah.
about same-sex couples? Do they also go through couple pause from what you know?
Yes. So couple pause is couple oriented approach, right? So of course, even if we really say it's like male and female, right? It could be easily applied to our LGBT friends, because especially, for example, if anthropos, actually it might be a lot easier to treat them, just because they both kind of experience the same thing, right? Either it's the menopausal changes or the andropausal changes. And so yeah, so you have couple exercises guided sensate exercises, which is um, has been studied, and so you do that in increments. Na they start like they start only with touching, and then eventually the parang it will go to caressing, and then until of course they graduate and get to um, the sexual intercourse and penetration itself.
Great. So there are stages then, and there are workarounds to kind of rehabilitate
Yes.
in case of these situations.
Yeah.
Good. Sige, I actually like that the word couple pause. I've never heard of this until now. So thanks for clarifying and then shedding light on that. Hilda Bon, any words before we move to the next set of words?
Hello. So, same lang po tayo din, no? May couple pause din po pala. And siguro itong andropause is, alam ko siya siguro dati. Pero ngayon parang nung narinig ko ulit, parang na-freshen up ulit yung idea ko about andropause. So, meron din po palang ganon.
Bon?
Okay. Yes, for me, ano rin, bago talaga sa akin tong couple pause na to. Parang, inisip ko, pero pwede rin pala siyang mangyari ng sabay yung couple. Kaya, inisip ko kasi before, parang, paano yun? Kasi syempre, yung relationship ng isang mag-asawa, parang it's very important. Yung intimacy is very important sa kanila. Pero paano kung may naunang mag-menopause or ano, di ba? Parang, paano nila ma-resolve yung or paano nila ma-maintain yung ano nila when it comes to intimacy. So, ayun po.
Next set of words, Doc, will be, ito na, medyo parang masakit na to pakinggan. So, iwan ko na sa iyo yan.
They're really painful. Literally. So first, dyspareunia, in layman term, it's basically pain during intercourse, which is usually experienced by the female. So dyspareunia, it could be it's actually very common. 7.5% of women who are sexually active experience that. So from the age of 16 up until 74, right? And you have two types of dyspareunia. So you have superficial and deep. So sometimes there are people, papasok pa lang, mag-enter pa lang, or sometimes just caressing the, pelvic area or the vaginal area, there's pain. While, and, of course, we always say, especially for pain, there are times, and mostly it's psychological, but even if, for example, the cause is psychological, there is actually a very physiologic symptom. Talagang there's pain, sometimes it contracts, you cannot, like, the male cannot enter kasi talagang contracted yung pelvic floor muscles, right? And then deep naman, so usually male is able to penetrate, but once the action is being performed deep, inside the pelvis or the vaginal wall, may pain. So yan usually, aside from sexual, the disorder itself, right? If there's, for example, there's a psychological, of course, component, or there's inadequate lubrication, but sometimes it's also a sign of other OB or gynecologic problems. So ito, when women feel this, that it's good to consult your doctor. But of course, previously, usually females, when they experience pain during sex, they don't really think na they don't usually go right to their doctor, right? Usually we go to the OBGYN if there's bleeding during sex, right? Probably that's it. Pero if there's just a little bit of pain, maybe they dismiss it, right? So next one is erectile dysfunction. This is very common, and It's very common in, of course, this happens in male. In Asia, actually, when they did a prevalence study about different countries had different, of course, prevalence. It ranges from 11% to 85%. And parang in a total aggregate, Pinoy Pride, Philippines has the highest, but it's an old study. It has to be we have to probably do another region-wide study, or at least in the Philippines, because in the Philippines, at least 65% of men report to have erectile dysfunction. Ano ba yan? Men who cannot, um, most of them who cannot either achieve or sustain an erection. So they cannot get hard or they cannot sustain it. Ayun. And then for premature ejaculation naman, another common problem, right? Although sometimes it's more pronounced in the younger population. If erectile dysfunction is a usual problem of like those 55 and above, premature ejaculation usually it's a problem of adolescents until like young adulthood. Right. So premature ejaculation naman is that when a male usually is cannot control the ejaculation, because of course, part of the cycle natin, right? There's a plateau phase and excitement. Usually men could have, develops that ability or skill to hold it, right? To sustain erection before, and then they could voluntarily time their orgasm. Pero with premature ejaculation, usually talaga to, it's parang when we define it, when a male comes or reaches orgasm or ejaculates within 1 to 2 minutes of penetrative sex. So, yun.
Alright. Clarity. Kailangan natin patugtugin yung clarity. Very, very, very insightful. Especially, I learned a lot about the dyspareunia. It's no, it's mahirap siya pakinggan actually. I mean, can you just imagine if a pleasurable act turns out to be really painful, and parang may layers din pala. No, minsan you're not even going deep. Parang kahit yung surface pa lang, meron na agad pain or may resistance. So I can just imagine how hard or how painful that is physically, and I'm sure how that's going to affect their relationship also, right? Because so, and then I like the distinction between more of older males go through erectile dysfunction, and more younger males go through the premature ejaculation part. Yep, Hilda Bon.
Ayun po. Dami ko po natutunan din dito sa lalo na po dito sa premature ejaculation, Doc. So, ibig sabihin po ba nun, like for example, di ba po, 1 or 2 minutes yon agad lumabas. So, ibig sabihin ito po, may mga chance po ba to na ito yung mga causes kung bakit may mga nabubuntis agad na hindi nila sinasadya, yung mga ganun po?
Well, part reason. Part reason. But usually kasi rin, with premature ejaculation, it happens prematurely, but for at most cases, because you don't have enough plateau and arousal phase, you don't have enough of the fluid, right? That would be enough to traverse the actual vaginal canal, and then for the sperm to actually reach the egg cell inside the uterus. So usually minimal din yung nare-release na semen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yun po.
I would add to that, siguro, this boils down to communication also, I would say, from Hilda's question. Let's say, meron kasi dapat talagang communication between the partners, right? So, in many reasons, like siguro, yeah, the unwanted pregnancy is very prevalent in our culture. And um, I'll try to stay neutral on that note. Ang dami kong gusto sabihin, but let's say, ano lang muna, chill. Ano ba to? So, I would say use of contraceptives. Diba? That has to be clear between a couple engaging in sexual act. I'm going to use which one ba? Diba? You have pills, you have condoms, you have your IUDs, different kinds of things.
Implant.
Implants, that has to be clear. Now we should, if we want a healthy relationship, that has to be clear. Then also, yun nga, during the act itself, given alluding to what Doc said, na it's a process from the start, from the attraction, the desire phase hanggang sa dulo. Even especially during the climax or the the excitation phase, dapat malinaw sa inyo, ano ba, are we, you know what I mean? Parang that it has to be clear what the approach will be. Para hindi tayo magsasuffer sa dulo. Kasi isipin din natin yung mga bata. Okay, I'll stop there. So, Bon? Ay, she's...
Naging family planning tayo.
Ayun, same din naman po sa akin. Parang I can only imagine yung mga patients ko rin siguro no na-encounter na na may malaking chance no na may nakaka-experience ng ganito, especially yung erectile dysfunction for males and yung sa females na dyspareunia. I can only imagine yung mental mental toll sa kanila. Kasi syempre yung experience na to, dapat ito yung way nila to connect with their loved ones, 'di ba? Tapos nagiging painful siya and parang talaga malaking effect yun, not just to their own mental health but also to their relationship.
Right.
May I just give a quick shout out to Maria Renker, our Filipinos in Germany representative. Hello, Maria. Hi. Thank you for tuning in.
Hi, guten Morgen.
Yeah. Ayan, si Doc Casey, meron niyang affiliation sa Munich. She's
I was just there. I was just there last month, actually.
Amazing. All right. Sige. So, I think we have gathered some questions from initially, and I will have Hilda and Bon lead this discussion. I'll temporarily step out of the room, and then siguro pag sisingit ako, I'm just gonna jump in. So, all right. Take it away, people.
Alright, so discussion na tayo, question and answer portion tayo, Doc. So, meron kami ditong kinolect na mga questions na from the audience po, pre-questions din nila. So, the first question is, how does disability affect sexual health?
Okay. So, firstly, when we say as medical professionals, we know that health is not just the absence of disease, right? It's the complete physical, emotional, social, psychological well-being of the person. So when we say sexual health, it's also that. It's not just the absence of any disorder or disease, but more than that, it's positive. It's being able to have a positive and respectful approach to sex and the possibility of a pleasurable and safe experience, right? So basically, that's the sexual health. And disability, on the other hand, of course, I know you guys are PTs, and usually you deal with patients who recently just had, physical disabilities due to injuries or cerebrovascular accidents or strokes. But there are different kinds of disabilities. So meron developmental disability, intellectual disability. Yung iba, those are who are born with it, right?
Mhm.
So different different kinds of disability affect sexual health. But generally, it's the first parts are, of course, sexually transmitted infections and diseases, right? So aside from the usual that we know, chlamydia, gonorrhea, um, herpes, there's also HIV, and then of course these naman, what we dread there is if these are recurrent, then that might lead to cancer and infertility. Other, you know, problems with disability that lead to sexual health problems would be, of course, unintended pregnancies, abortion, sometimes abuse. So especially for intellectual or developmental disabilities. Kasi nagsa-start yan, young pa sila, di ba? And they don't really understand it. Um, so usually they're the ones prone to being to sexual abuse. And then, of course, sexual dysfunctions kasi usually there are physiologic changes, right? That happens after a disability. And so hormonal, physical, and usually people say, for example, for your patients, post-stroke patients, post spinal cord injury and what have you, um, usually that also leads to depression, right? Because of the changes in how they live their life, right? Yung daily activities nila. So and then of course depression or the psyche of a person is very important when it comes to sex, because sex, though it is a physical act, um, it is mainly it's also a relational and intimate act shared with another person usually, right? So, yeah.
Okay. So, ano 'no, so parang ang laki din po talaga ng, impact din ng disability sa sexual health, and especially dun din sa ano namin po kasi is yung sexual dysfunction. Tama ka po 'no, Miss Casey, na malaking impact siya sa mental health ng patients, especially 'no, sa pag-ano, depression, kasi siyempre yun nga po sinabi ko kanina, yun yung number one concern nila, 'no? So, yun po.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you,
And not
Miss
to
Casey.
mention, also,
Mhm.
syempre, when somebody has a disability or after magkasakit, there are also economic, right?
Yeah.
Additional economic burden.
Mhm.
So, when somebody is stressed, and especially if for the middle class or the lower income, population, they probably won't mind. They parang they prioritize the disability itself
Mhm.
and just think of that person as ill, and they disregard that person used to have sexual health needs, right? That person is still that person could still be a sexual person, right? But of course, because of that, they focus lang on the disability, everything that comes around it, right?
So parang isa 'to 'no, Sir Bon, sa puwedeng sagot dun sa tanong kanina ni Sir Josh. Ano yung barriers din kung bakit kaya ano 'no, yung sexual health is parang nale-left behind? So economic ano
Yes.
din pala status
Oo.
din.
Yes, especially dito sa ano natin 'no, sa country din natin and sa mga ano natin, mga kababayan natin na nasa lower class. So Miss Casey 'no, for our next question, so what are the common issues related to sexual well-being po?
Okay. So common issues there, of course, on an advocate side, right? Public health
Hmm,
perspective, the access, right? The access to comprehensive and quality information. So that's why it's good that we have private organizations who are like you guys who are doing this,
mm,
opening up, venues where people could ask questions and learn. And then, yeah, knowledge of risks. And then, um, also, of course, aside from access to information, access to the care itself. And most common issues natin, sinabi na natin kanina, sexually transmitted diseases that could eventually lead to, cancers or infertility. You have unwanted pregnancy and abortions. You have sexual dysfunctions, sexual violence, harmful practices, and because in other countries, there's still, uso pa rin yung mga sexual mutilation, right? So when now going back, of course, to sexual dysfunction, naalala natin yung sexual cycle. So in every phase of the sexual cycle, merong dysfunction na pwede mangyari, right? So you have sexual desire disorders, you have sexual arousal disorders, and then you have people who have delay in orgasms or those who can't achieve orgasm or anorgasmia, right? Some people, they have parang nakasteady sila sa plateau phase, like priapism. So sobrang they're maintained yung hardness of the penis to a point na it's painful. Yeah. So plateau and resolution problems. And so those are some of the common issues. Diniscuss natin kanina yung dyspareunia, erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and for women, I guess specifically, they have yung mga inability to orgasm, inability to achieve or inadequate lubrication, and then inability to climb. Right?
Mhm. So, ayun, ang dami pala, no? Sa kahit saang phases pala, pwede magkaroon ng disability. Pero ano naman po, no? Other ways to resolve parang those things naman po, Doc, no?
Yes. Of course, meron naman na tayong mga treatments, right?
Mhm.
So, and usually we try to make it holistic as possible. So
Mhm.
there are, of course, if you have STI, you have antibiotics. And then to prevent HIV, we have PrEP now, right? We have
Mhm.
antiretrovirals. Tapos, of course, to prevent unwanted pregnancies, um, we have mga, contraception. But for
Mhm.
other countries, abortion is legal, so they can safely undergo medical or assisted abortion. And then for sexual dysfunctions, either hormonal treatments, we send them to for psychological counseling or psychotherapy. So there are different ways.
Mhm.
Right? Some naman pharmacological or mga or surgical or invasive procedures.
Yeah. Okay, for the next question naman, Doc. Is sex life possible after having physical disabilities such as total paralysis of lower extremity or partial paralysis after stroke?
Yes, definitely. So usually naman kasi what's affected during when you have paralysis, it's the motor, right? The motor neuron of the spinal cord or of the brain, right? And so yes, it is of course still possible to have a pleasurable sexual um, experience or life after stroke. It's just that, syempre, we have to make sure first that the patient is medically stable na, right? So usually for the first 2 weeks, wala talaga yan, right? But usually first month, as long as they're medically stable, they could resume. And like 3 to 6 months, that's safe. If they are taking, say, anticoagulants like warfarin, usually they cannot take other medications for for their sexual dysfunction concurrent. Yun lang. So, parang 3 months silang waiting.
Okay. How about naman po, Doc, like for example, for the total paralysis patients with spinal cord injury. So, di ba po parang meron silang erectile dysfunction? Is it parang possible po ba to take Viagra po para mas ma-facilitate din yung erection nila?
Yes, pwede pa rin naman. But like I said, if it if they're taking anticoagulants, right? Usually we cannot give them concurrently, and definitely not during the first 3 months of
Oh.
treatment. But yeah, so now luckily also there are other forms of treatment. So some people are being weaned off Viagra, especially yung mga post heart attack, post stroke patients. So they could get parang intracavernosal injections,
Mm-hmm.
which is more long term. They can do parang shockwave therapy, which is like an ultrasound that, and then parang after 6 to 12 treatments, usually parang they have lesser need for Viagra. They are able to achieve erectile function again.
Oh, okay. So,
So there
yeah.
are other treatment options if they cannot take Viagra post-stroke, especially during the first 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wow. So, yun. For the next question.
Ayan. So, next question po. Do only men need sex therapy or does women need it too?
But of course, right?
Obviously.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, 43% of women experience or report, um, you know, problems regarding sex. Na parang they have some sort of, inability to, to achieve orgasm or pleasure, ganyan.
Mm-hmm.
So, meanwhile, men actually only 31% lang usually nagre-report.
So
And
that's a
yeah.
huge percentage.
Yeah, so both men and women need it. Although, if anything, I'd like to say now, right? Mostly with the organizations that we see now, those who are opening up the conversation, when they focus on normalizing sexual pleasure, they focus on women, on women's health, because we think that parang women are usually kasi reserved, right? It's a taboo conversation for us compared to men who just really talk about it fiercely.
Mm.
Usually, there are also men are the ones who won't go to actual sex therapy, right? Parang, and sila kasi yung, of course, it's like when there's a problem, usually they're in denial when there's a problem out there, right? With their
Right.
manhood.
Yeah.
So, in relation with that, Doc, parang paano ba masasabi? Kasi parang may nakausap kasi ako before, hindi kasi niya alam kung paano niya masasabi na naka-reach siya ng orgasm. Like, yung nasabi mo kanina, Doc, is parang some women do not know how to produce orgasm. So, paano kaya yun, Doc?
The only practical answer there is that they need to pleasure themselves. That's how they realize. They have to learn their body.
Mm-hmm.
So when they masturbate, right? They try to touch places where they feel most, parang aroused. They'd learn more, and then if they just keep doing it, they'd eventually reach that climax and orgasm. And when they feel that, they'd never lose, that knowledge. Oh my gosh, that's how it feels pala. And then eventually, they realize, oh my gosh, I haven't been, for all these years pala, I haven't really been, experiencing that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you have to do sexual, self-pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
You could see it as, learning about your body. And then Because when you learn about your body also, where it feels good, how you want to be, pleased, then it would be easier for you to communicate that and verbalize that. No, touch me here, right? Do this, don't do that.
Mhm. Okay, so i-share ko yan, Doc. So, another question po kasi about dito din sa women, Doc, no? Kasi siya, ang problem po kasi niya is nagkakaroon siya ng pelvic pain, the low back pain, parang hindi pa nakaka-reach ng orgasm sila nung both nung husband niya is laging may pain. So, parang yun yung problem po niya talaga when making love. So, paano po naman kaya yun, Doc?
Like we said, that could be two things. Either meron talaga siyang deep dyspareunia, right? If the pain is coming from like somehow it feels in from the inside, but if the pain is coming from the lower back, that more like like a strain to the muscle or to the lumbar spine, then easily what we could do there is they could explore different positions, either different positions or they could use props. So they could use more pillows, cushions, they could do side lying. Maybe she could go on top, right? Kasi maybe the weight is the weight dynamic is causing pressure to her lower back.
Okay.
So, those things.
All right, so let's move on to the next question. So, what is the greatest challenge to those with disabilities in regard to sexuality?
I think one of the greatest challenge there is that people, PWDs or people with disability, parang everyone assumes now that they're sick, now that half of their leg is paralyzed or both, na parang they're asexual na, they're supposed to have no more sexual drive, right? Parang ganun. But they're not, they're not less interested in sex. They're not less attractive, right? And it doesn't mean that they can't have a rich sexual life. I think that's one of the greatest challenges there, yung perception of, prejudice lang or stereotype. And then the of course the challenge also there is psychological, right? Because sex is about who we think we are, how good we feel about our body and ourselves when we engage, and then mobility, of course, right? Especially there would be some restrictions, right? And then the another challenge with those with disability is caregiver fatigue, right? Kasi aside from, of course, the patients would probably be easily fatigued, right? They're weak, there's weakness in one or both sides of the body. The partner who's also taking care of them, napapagod din, right? Parang psychologically, physically, financially. So those are the challenges when it comes to dealing with persons with disabilities and regarding their sexuality.
Okay. So, thank you, Doc. Then, the next question is, will it
Yeah,
ever be safe? Okay,
sige,
go,
sige.
Sir Bon.
For our next question po, will it ever be safe for me to go back to intimate and sexual activities with my partner after stroke?
Yes, definitely, right? But of course, it's a matter of when, right? It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. So once the patient is medically, cardiovascular, hemodynamically stable, pwede na. And of course, you have to seek clearance from your neurologist and your cardiologist, right? Usually, the first month, baka sabihin pa nila, not yet, right? 3 to 6 months would be safe. After a year, that would be fine. The chances of you having a stroke, kasi I think the fear there is that baka when they do it, biglang mag-stroke, right? Magkaroon ng another stroke while they're doing it. chances are, parang if you see it, sex is like just climbing up 2 flights of stairs. So the risk of you getting a stroke is just the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? While doing sex or just climbing up a stair. So you know so yes, there you could safely go back to being intimate with your partner after a stroke, but it's just a matter of when. And and practical wise, right? Because usually they're tired, right? They're easily exhausted, especially when they're already starting rehab and treatment. So the best time is to do it after rest or in the morning. So when they're starting, do it in the morning. So when they're more, when they're well rested and they have more energy. And for those who have, of course, for maintenance medications, right? There are certain medications that cause low libido, or that decreases their ability to be erect, like your beta blockers, which is common, a very common heart um, drug. So they could do it before taking the meds, right? So kaya morning is the best time. Upon waking up, right, before they drink all the maintenance meds, do it.
Okay, naalala ko tuloy, Doc, si Boy Abunda na when is the best time to have sex? So, in general, Doc, morning talaga ang sagot,
Yes,
no? Yes,
yes,
it's
of course.
morning. Okay.
Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right?
Okay, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Talagang, very interesting ang morning talaga dapat.
So, gusto ko lang bumati po ng good morning sa lahat.
Then for the last question dito po na-collect namin, is sex therapy and sexual rehabilitation accessible in the Philippines?
We are gonna try to make it accessible. you know, um, so far, I know there is another a sexologist, a sexual doctor who has her own company, and but say for example for usually kasi when we say sex therapy, ito yung parang sex counseling, right? And couples counseling. Um, Usually our psychologists, aside from the fact that we really have limited number of psychologists and psychiatrists in the Philippines dealing with mental health, you know, on top of that pa, konti lang ang nagsispecialize on couples therapy and sex therapy, right? So, like say for example, for my company, what I've set up is that people could. I've partnered with a Canadian counseling company na sila talaga they focus on couples and sex therapy, right? So via Zoom, patients all over the world, patients from Dubai, patients from here in the Philippines could reach out, could get themselves scheduled. But of course, the hope is that eventually we'll be able to have doctors, either general practitioners, family doctors, OBGYNs, urologists, who would be able to, if not fully provide the, sex therapy, but be able to guide at least in how to slowly get back their, especially post-stroke patients, right? How could they get back into the game itself, right? Slowly. And, you know, there are different ways, um, parang to work around it, right? So definitely for post-stroke patients, um, now I'd like to say if sex therapy is not yet, fully accessible talaga, right? Because it's not. It's still gonna be a growing um, industry for us. Kasi Philippines nga kakapasa lang natin ng RH law, right? We're still discussing nga if abortion should be legal or not, you know. Um, but now there are, especially in the more developed countries, you have dating apps for PWDs, specifically for PWDs, although we encourage them to just use, Hinge or Tinder, yung what normal people use, because just because you're wheelchair bound does not mean you're only supposed to be with another person who is also disabled, right? Love wins, right? And so yeah, aside from that, there are shops now. There are e-commerce shops and businesses that develop not just toys, but they also develop equipment and furniture, mainly for PWDs. And so you have tantric chairs, especially for PWDs, that allow them to be seated if they have lower extremity weaknesses, and then props like pillows, cushions, inflatables that would adjust to kung nasan ba yung weak part. So say for example, if the left side of the body is weak, so you could use a prop, right? Go side lying, use a prop to protect the back, and then the strong arm would still be free to move normally. So parang so yeah, basically it would still be growing here in the Philippines, right? But it's not zero. And with logistics are getting back to normal, you could order it you could order toys and and other tools abroad for to help couples here, especially those na recent pa lang na battling or going through a transition with disability.
Oh, so much information, Doc. Thank you so much. I think those were the questions that we gathered from our groups. Now we were asking. We have one last question from our audience. So Shelly Miel is asking, for this dyspareunia, is Luke helpful?
Hi, Queen. Thank you for your question. So lube, actually, it depends on the cause of the dyspareunia. Sometimes lube does not help, especially if it's psychological, right? And if it's superficial na dyspareunia and then nagvavaginismus, so parang the pelvic floor muscles just really close up and tighten, that no penetration can be done. No matter how much lube you put, usually doesn't help. So for those cases, what we give usually are muscle relaxants. If not muscle relaxants, if it's psychologically, driven, counseling and antipsychotic drugs or anti-anxiety drugs ang ginagamit. So yeah.
Perfect.
For dyspareunia, deep dyspareunia, lube might be able, lube could help, but at the same time, it's also a lot of communication and patience especially from the male partner. So you could use that patience and lube at the same time, to just take things slow, communicate, make sure that the patient feels safe. Usually nalalessen yung tension, and then the pain would sometimes, if not totally, removed, at least alleviated a little bit for them to at least be able to, complete the sexual act.
Amazing. All right. Sige. So that was a really fruitful discussion. Can we start? I guess we can start wrapping up our conversation. So before our last segment of the day. So may I have, siguro, Bon, ikaw muna. What's your takeaway from today's community talk? We're almost finished.
Hello, ayan. So, ang main takeaway ko dito is yun nga po, na-realize ko talaga dito yung importance ng parang pag-disseminate ng information and awareness about sexual health for me talaga, sexual health nga po, na-realize ko that it's very important, not just for yung normal people, but also we really need to make to make people with disabilities aware that even with disability, it is still they are still capable. They will still be capable, no, for a healthy sexual hair or sexual sexual well-being. So yun.
Okay, great. Hilda?
For me naman po is, ang takeaway ko naman is, before kasi anday ko ang naiisip, no, ano ba yung mga factors affecting kung bakit hindi pa natatanggap or hindi pa ganun ka well known ang sexual health and sexual rehab dito sa Philippines, no? So, ang nadagdag sa isip, nawala sa isip ko yung about sa economic status. Kasi it makes sense, no, kung mahal ang gamot, mahal ang mga may yung mga kailangan for that certain individual, parang medyo i-set behind, manleft behind na talaga yung sexual health. Kasi parang hindi na yun kailangan, that's the least of their concern. No, yung parang usually ang laging pinupuntahan na is yung mga maintenance sa doctors like neurologist, cardiologist, ganun, no? So, yun yung parang, okay, so ito pa pala yung isa sa missing piece na iniisip ko. Ano pa ba yung mga factors na kulang pa? And also, no, I would like to highlight yung sa, tinashare ngayon tuloy yung tantric chair. So, ano ba yung tsura nun? So, yun pala yung nakikita ko na it helps din pala talaga sa in love.
Saan mo nakikita, Hilda? Sabihin mo.
Sa mga nadadaanan ko, yung mga
Okay, share.
Saan ka nag-search?
Sabi ko,
Yung ba yung sinasabi mong side business mo? Ay, sorry.
So, may gamit pala yun. Nakala ko talaga is props lang siya na napanood kasi sa TV, sa movie. Yung pala is helpful din pala talaga siya in making love, no? Para talagang ma-address din somehow yung mga problems na nagmeding mag-arise, no, during sexual activity. So, yun.
Wait, sorry, I know takeaways na tayo and, we're short of time, but because of what Hilda just said, sometimes, after a stroke or after a new onset of disability, some people, of course, there's a big chunk they experience sexual problems because, di ba, syempre, the weakness, yung body image nila, distorted, but somehow, sometimes, they report na sexual life becomes better for them. Because, firstly, mas nagtutuon ng pansin yung partner nila sa kanila. And because of that, also, they become more, they would explore how to, they explore new positions, new gadgets, right? On how to go about their sexual encounter. So sometimes, sometimes it's not all bad. After stroke and a disability, it's usually not all bad. It depends on how the partners relate with each other, I guess, and how they deal with it and see it.
Wow, very powerful again, Doc. Yung outlook, di ba? Nasa outlook talaga yan eh.
Yes.
There are things that happen that are beyond our control, and sometimes what matters more is how we respond to what happens. No one knows if that really happened already. Our choice after that happened, that determines the rest of our lives. No?
Yeah.
So, for me naman, my takeaway, gusto magsalita ng dog. Dog, halika.
Meron din siya takeaways.
Sang-ayon ko ang ating kasamang Okay. So, for me, the sooner we open conversations about sexual health and well-being, the sooner we accept that this is part of us as people, as part of our health, social well-being, the better we are, the more complete we will be. Kasi nga, talaga, parang yun nga, we're too conservative on surface, pero sa totoo lang, I mean modern naman eh. Now we can talk about, the world is more open. The fact that we can talk about this now, my parents are watching, so I mean, it's not like we were that we can't talk about these things anymore. we are progressing. There are options available. It's not the end of the world. Pag nagkaroon ng disability, or if we, let's say, happen to have conditions that limit us from enjoying this aspect of ourselves, hindi huli ang lahat. And that's why we have services that have come about, no pun intended, to help us discover this side of us and improve, because it's essential. It's our nature, as depending again from what you believe in, but this is really part of us as human beings. We need to understand and we need to overcome kung meron mang conditions that are limiting us from enjoying a full life. Sige, Doc, we will save you for later. Before we close this, we're going to play a recorded clip from our colleague, si Sir Diyan, whose expertise is sharing what physical therapists can do in multiple conditions. So we're going to play this video, step out for a bit, and then close this show. Okay?
All right.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si PT Diyan, andito muli upang magbahagi ng mga kaalaman upang inyong maunawaan kung ano nga ba ang magagawa naming mga physical therapists para sa iba't ibang mga kondisyon. Sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa Facebook at sa YouTube Live, sa mga tututok pa lamang o kaya'y manonood ng aming recorded stream, maraming salamat po sa inyong pagtutok sa aming buwan ng Community Talks. Karaniwang tanong sa mga klinika at mga ospital ng mga pasyenteng PWDs kung pwede pa ba sila makipagtalik o kaya'y magkaanak pa dahil sa pagkakaroon ng mga kondisyon na pumipigil sa kanilang gawin ang ganitong aktibidad. Kaya't ating pag-usapan kung ano nga ba ang magagawa naming mga physical therapists sa sexual health. Gaya ng ibang mga kondisyon, ang sexual rehabilitation ay isang multidisciplinary approach na kinabibilangan ng mga iba't ibang espesyalista gaya ng mga neurologists, gynecologists, urologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists at marami pang iba. Ayon sa isang pag-aaral mula sa University of Quebec sa Canada, ang pakikipagtalik ay isang form ng pag-eehersisyo. Ngunit hindi dapat palitan ng pakikipagtalik ang pag-eehersisyo. On average, ang sexual activity ay naglalaro sa 3.0 to 6.0 METs. Ang metabolic equivalent ay ang clinical measure ng physical exertion. Mas intense ang sexual activity, mas mataas na metabolic equivalent. Hence, mas nakakapagod. Dahil dito, isa sa mga roles namin mga physical therapists ay ang pagpapakanda ng cardiopulmonary endurance ng mga PWDs. Dahil mataas ang energy expenditure ng pakikipagtalik, kinakailangang handa ang pangangatawan nila para hindi sila mabilis mapagod. Ang inyong PT ay maaaring gumawa ng exercise program na akma para sa inyong kondisyon. Minsan, hindi ang kapaguran ang nagiging balakid sa pakikipagtalik. Maaring problema sa kalamnan sa may pigi at balakang, maging sa may punja at sa may singit. Pwedeng mahina, parang lampa, o kaya'y matigas ang mga muscles, masakit kapag nakikipagtalik, mabilis maihi, o hindi makontrol ang pag-ihi at pagdumi, sobrang bilis o sobrang tagal mag-orgasm, at marami pang iba. May tinatawag na pelvic floor physical therapy. Ito ay isang special practice ng physical therapy na layong makatulong sa maraming problema sa ating pelvic floor or ang area na malapit sa may-ari, singit at puwetan na nagiging balakid sa pakikipagtalik at sa pangkabuuang kalidad ng buhay. Ilan sa mga ginagawa sa pelvic floor physical therapy ay ang pagbibigay ng mga exercises gaya ng breathing exercises para makatulong sa relaxation. at efficiency ng iba pang mga exercises. Meron ding mga binibigay na exercises specific sa pelvic floor, gaya ng Kegels exercise. Meron ding electrical stimulation at biofeedback para makatulong sa muscle activation. With any physical therapy program, hindi mawawala ang patient education para mas maunawaan nila ang kanilang mga kondisyon at home exercise programs dahil hindi naman sa lahat ng panahon ay may PT session. Diyan po nagtatapos ang aking munting pagbabahagi. Kung kayo ay nakararanas ng problema sa inyong sexual health, huwag mangambang sumangguni sa inyong doktor. Muli, maraming salamat po sa inyong pagtutok. Paalam po.
Ayun na nga. Okay, thank you so much, PT Jan. At mamimiss natin ang si PT Jan at for now, sa ngayon, ito muna ang huli nating time na magpa-participate si Jan sa ating community talk. So, just want to make a big shout out. Thank you, PT Jan, for the last community talks na you shared your knowledge and time with us. So, big shout out to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, sige. So, let's now wrap things up. So, Doc Casey, so maybe we'll start with a quick message from you and then a little plug. So, we've posted this Instagram page kung saan pwede ka nilang kontakin sa mga manonood at nanonood sa ngayon if ever they need your services. So, please, final words and then introduce your services na lang. Ay, nakamute ka, Doc.
Hi again. So, again, this is Dr. Casey Halili. Well, you can find me on Instagram as Casey Halili or through SexMD Clinic. So, currently, we are building our physical clinic in Bonifacio Global City. But if you are in need of any consultation or sexual therapy, assisted therapy, sensate exercises for you and your partner, you could already send us a message and we can do it either online, or what we do specialize in is we do home visits. So aside from that, we can provide home service testings for, to get your baseline hormones and all that, for us to help diagnose, if you have sexual health problems, so we could diagnose if this is hormonal, physical, physiologic, psychological, right? Because we take everything holistically in Sex MD Clinic. And so I hope to see you guys soon again.
Thank you very much. Any final message from you before we wrap everything up?
Final message. Well, firstly, thank you, Josh, to Hilda, and to Bon. Thank you for the organization for putting out this webinar, because it is very important. Usually the conversations that we see now, it's all about pleasure, right? Talking about pleasure, as if women, or as if we don't for women who have not started yet in their journey, right? But aside from that, aside from the psychological and social aspect of sexual health, there is really a physical, right? Physical part of it, which is, sometimes yun yung mas frustrating, especially for PWDs, right? And I hope that they know from this webinar na you could count on your doctors and your PTs to help you, get back, not only to add years to your life, but to add quality to your years.
Amazing. All right. I think that's the perfect finish. Orgasmic ang finish. Very nice. Okay, please follow us on Instagram, Kakayanan, and SexMD Clinic. And then that ends our community talk for today. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nanood at sa mga manonood pa. This can be viewed sa mga hindi nakabuo po ng conversation. You can just play this at your own time, no? Kapag may extra time kayo dyan, and if you want to revisit this. And then, okay, so we'll enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Doc Casey, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great weekend and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's
Valentine's Day.
Tawagan nyo na yung mga tatawagan nyo dyan. Okay, bye.